Welcome to Nearly All Green Noom Kitchen. My name is Jim John Marks. We're going to break down a white onion here. You're going to cut that in half, peel out the outer layers that you don't want. I like to make my radial cuts with a small paring knife and then come back with a chef's knife and never cut into that bud bit that you can see there in the slow-mo shot. That's the bit that'll make you cry, and it doesn't taste nearly as good as the rest, so just leave it out. Same thing again here. And I've got basically 1 potato per person here. Potatoes, believe it or not, are green. And that's really all the fat we're going to use for this entire large dish that makes 2 very large portions here. This is a dinner recipe, not a lunch or a breakfast, so these are slightly bigger portions. But that's not a lot of oil. So we're going to break down these potatoes, 1 per person, as I said. This is a great way to use up all those extra holiday leftovers from Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's when we couldn't have 20 people over to our house this year. And so if you don't want to waste those things, this is a great way to use them. You always do want to add salt to your onions to weep out the water. Otherwise, weird things will happen to your onions and they'll mostly just burn. And that gentle sizzling is what you hear. You don't want to be too aggressive with your level of heat. Because this is going to be on the stove for quite a little while and we don't want things to just dry out and burn and get weird, so a nice gentle sizzle. And once we've broken down this last bit of potato, we're going to go ahead and add those directly in with the onions and get those all stirred in to that salt, and then we're going to cover them, and that way the water from the onion is basically going to steam the potato. And again, believe it or not, potatoes are a green food, even though they're very starchy, because they're quite filling. And if you keep the skins on, they're quite nutritious. I'm using roasting potatoes here. Russet potatoes, which are more popular for baking, have even more nutrition in their skins. And we use those a lot as our starch for an evening if we're going to do something quite wet over the top, like a stew or something. And now I'm breaking down my leftover turkey. This was actually cooked for New Year's Day, not all the way back to Thanksgiving. And yes, it looks quite dark. That's because I do deep fry my turkeys. And believe it or not, a deep fried turkey is not full of grease and oil and fat, and it isn't bad for you. Really, there's only any fat at all in the skin, and that was already there before you cooked it because skin is fatty. So if you're really that worried about it, you can take the skin off. I brine mine with Italian seasonings, and the skin is delicious, so we keep it. This is a wing, and you can see with a good cook the original time around, and these are cold. When I'm breaking them down, I can get down just about to the bare bone. So we're avoiding waste. And then I'm adding some white meat here, which of course breaks down much quicker because there's no bones in it. And again, you can leave that skin off if you want, but it is quite delicious, so we're going to keep it. It adds a little bit of non-green to the dish, but again, you have full control over how much of that you add. So depending on your budget for the day, you can leave it in or take it out. And then we're going to add this in with our onions and our potatoes. Again, a nice gentle sizzle. I'm checking my gravy. And remember, gravy is basically just water with a little bit of roux added to it, which if you watched our whole wheat Cajun-style pasta, you know that's just a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil that goes a long way. So gravy is a great way to bring flavor without blowing a lot of your calorie budget. When this has been steaming a while, you're going to want to use a sharp knife. Check your potatoes. If you can easily pierce into one of your potato cubes with not too much pressure, then you know those are basically done. And you can add whatever vegetables you want. I went with some broccoli florets here. And because you have control over how much gravy you add to your final dish, you can control how much not green you have with the meal. My final video of the final cook was in portrait mode, so I didn't include it. Apologies, but I didn't want to hurt your brain.